Get ready for a no BS approach to health and fitness. This is NBS Fitness Radio.
All right, welcome back to NBS Fitness Radio. I'm here with Joe Wager. Joe is a recent coach onboarded here at NBS Fitness, and his background is in athlete development, athletic training. So welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Thank you, David.
Awesome, man. Well, to begin with, just kind of give us your background. Like, how'd you get into athlete development, and what's been your kind of like educational background?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride the past few years. I always start with my freshman year in college. I went to college to throw discus and track and field and all that. And I remember first week of weight training, we walk in the weight room, it's 5 a.m. and the coaches in there look miserable. And, they're walking around with Bang energy drinks and they got bags under their eyes. And I was like, wow, I do not want to do this when I grow up. And what's really funny is, that was, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago or something. And 6 or 7 years later, I'm kind of doing what they do. And in between that time period, I met a lot of people who really inspired me. And I found the passion in coaching athletes. And there was that huge reward of, changing someone's life, helping them on the field, helping them, achieve their goals, avoid injury, all of that. There's a million rewards you get out of that. But after kind of discovering a few of those, I was like, this is awesome. This isn't even a job. It's a career that I can go to every day and be super happy.
Were you into the weight room before? Like, from doing track and field and doing discus was like, obviously weight training is a big part of that. Were you like into weight training?
Yeah, so we'll take a step back. I grew up playing every single sport. My parents, they never made me play sports, but they said, hey, we're signing you up for basketball, track, football, baseball, wrestling. I did everything growing up. And as I got older, through middle school and high school, they said, okay, let's kind of refine what we're doing. Let's do less and less sports each year. By the time I was in high school, I was just doing baseball, football, and track. I think I stopped wrestling right before high school. And I ended up, I think sophomore and junior year of high school, I was playing football, I was playing baseball, I was doing track, and I was kind of at a crossroads where I was starting to really, discus I was having a lot of fun with it. I was discovering new things with the sport and myself. I was like, this is a lot of fun. I might actually have a chance of being good at this. I'd always grown up wanting to play baseball professionally. That was my dream. But I was like, let's be realistic. The chances of going to college and getting a scholarship for track are a lot higher than baseball.
Yeah. And
it's a lot more fun, in my opinion. Not only fun, but it's a lot easier on the body. A lot of baseball players don't last that long.
Yeah.
The elbows and shoulder. In football, you're getting hit, you're getting tackled. But with discus, you have 60-year-old guys who are still out there throwing, keeping them healthy. I was like, this is an awesome sport. You can progress your whole entire life. It keeps you healthy. It's not as bad for you as other sports. For example, one would argue that bodybuilding, powerlifting, to some degree are unhealthy. But I think, the throwing sports are a lot of fun. It keeps you really explosive. You have to be strong. You have to be fast. You have to be coordinated. And anyway, so around that time, I said, okay, I'm gonna cut off baseball and football, which broke my heart. But I was like, it's time to really train discus and get good at this. And it was I saw a huge growth in the next few years.
When did you start doing like weight room stuff?
So that didn't really. I started messing around with buddies in the weight room in like 8th grade, maybe 9th grade. I had never gotten anything out of it until I think senior years when I started to get really interested. I was like, because my goal was the scholarship. I want to go to Division I. I want to get a scholarship. I want to do something big. And I started doing research in my own time on like training. I started reading books and stuff. I'd say senior year of high school is when it really started for me,
Yeah.
the interest in that. I started coaching a little bit. I started making my own program a little bit. And that was kind of nurtured once I got into college and I met these awesome coaches who I had some really bad strength coaches in college and I had some really great strength coaches. Shout out to Coach John, probably one of the most inspiring guys. He was one of my coaches, and he always.
And where'd you go to college?
I went to college at Southern Miss down in Hattiesburg, but that's when it kind of they were watering that plant, I guess, and I really got into it, and it just grew from there. I mean.
What was your original major when you went into college?
I went into college with a exercise science major,
Okay.
but I never knew.
Okay.
Do I want to do this?
Yeah.
Like, I just chose that because I I like working out.
Yeah.
I'll do the working out major.
Yeah. All right. So, got your degree in exercise science. Kind of decided, hey, this is a path I want to pursue. Talk a little bit about kind of like your experience down that path.
Yeah. So like I said, it mostly started in the weight room, but it got to a certain point where when we were in track and field, it was a bumpy road at Southern Miss. They were firing coaches every year. We were getting new coaches every year. I found myself, me and a buddy of mine were coaching the team pretty much because there would be certain times of the year when the coach had been fired and they hadn't rehired someone or the coach would leave. So we ended up coaching ourselves. And this kind of threw me into a position where I was required to do some of my own programming. The weight room was already taken care of, but it's very similar. It's a similar science when it comes to throwing.
Yeah.
You can't go out in the middle of the season and train super high volumes. It's about the same thing. And this kind of pushed me out into an uncomfortable zone where I continued to learn, continued to grow. And I'd say one of the big things in my career was it was right before I actually quit the track team my senior year of college and decided to train on my own and compete on my own unattached because of, like I mentioned, it was just crappy. The politics, people were getting fired. The coaching was not there. And I was like, I've been coaching myself for 3 years. I can do this for another year. And I saw some pretty good results. And as I was preparing for that, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this on my own, I need to really have an organized program. I firmly believe in the saying. I think Warren Buffett said, an idiot with a plan can beat a genius without a plan. Well, okay, you need to have a plan. So I sat down and for 6 months, and this was like in the middle of classes, it was just me not paying attention, me making programs and stuff. For 6 months, I wrote a 52-week strength training, speed and plyometrics and throwing program. And it's all of those things all combined into one so that you don't have a weight room coach doing this and then a throwing coach doing this. It complements itself during certain times of the year. So you're peaking in May and all that. And I made this and it ended up being a 70-page document. Not even half of it's the actual workouts, half of it's like, the hey, here's why we're doing this, here's what we need to do, some educational content. I spent a lot of time on that for myself, and as I was making, I was like, I need to give this to people. I need to sell this or something because there's so many throwers who don't have coaches in high school. So many high school coaches who don't know what they're doing and need guidance. And I was like, I'm going to sell this. I'll make it $70, one-time purchase. You buy it, you get the whole thing, and I'll even coach you a little bit after you buy it. And that was huge for me. It was a big stepping stone because that's when I started figuring out, there's a demand for this. People value what I have to say. People value my coaching. And I ended up selling, I think right now I've sold 110 copies of that. A lot of which are coaches, a lot of which are like semi-professionals. And I'd say the majority would be college and high school who just don't know what to do when they're not with their coach or don't have a coach. And that was huge for me because I put a lot of research and time into that. And after that, I was like, that was easy. I can do that again. And that kind of paved a path for me.
Very cool. Awesome. And so out of college, where'd you end up?
So before I graduated college, I ended up doing an internship. I got into an internship. I was planning on going and doing my internship over at a D1, but a buddy of mine, Hunter, was like, "Hey, dude, check out this place." And I was like, "That's not even on the map. I can't even find this place. Let me go see it." And I walk in there, and it's a huge facility, like indoor football field-ish, weight room, and it was connected to a sports medicine clinic / hospital, I guess you could say. And so the facility itself was a selling point for a lot of people. I mean, you walk in there and you see the biggest big ass fan that big ass fan sells. And I got into there and I was like, this is new. Let's check it out. And I ended up doing my internship there. It was 6 months. It was awesome. I learned a ton. I learned more from working in this place than I did from school.
Yeah.
Just because of the people I was surrounded by. It was constant education, constant development. My mentor and boss, Perry, would always say, "Okay, this week, we need to get you better at this. You're doing a great job with this, but this is something that you can work on. Like, I see potential for you, like, promising, like, let's work on this." And he would kind of throw me new assignments, new jobs, new things to work on. And it was a huge time of growth for me because I would tell Perry, I said, "Hey, man, whenever you throw me into the fire like that, I see growth in myself. Like, keep throwing me in the fire, like, throw me some challenging tasks." And so I graduated a few months later, and then immediately, they hired me there. I was also hired at a local university to be the throws coach there. So I was doing that, and I was coaching the throwers. And then shortly after that, the same university came to us, the sports performance training facility. It was called Traction. They came to us and said, "Hey, we need strength coaches. We don't have strength coaches.
Yeah.
All our athletes are injured. They're not doing well. We need help." And so we came in there. And then next thing you know, I'm coaching at the facility. I'm being a strength coach for several teams at this college. And then I was a throws coach at the same college. So I got really involved really quickly. I went from 0 to 100 real quick.
So you're working with athletes from middle school, high school, all the way up to college, maybe some professionals at the time.
Yeah.
Kind of getting a ton of experience, kind of being in charge of a lot of athletes.
Yeah, it was very diverse, especially at Traction. We would have like youth classes where it was like 7-year-olds to 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And we'd have adult classes where it was just your typical come after work, little workout with your buddies, stay in shape. And then we would have high school and college and professional athletes coming in who were trying to be the best. A lot of it was awesome. A lot of those high schoolers you'll see them on TV in a few years from now. One of them, Jake, was a high schooler, got to go hit in the home run derby.
The MLB home run derby?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
That's good old Jake and his brother Joe. They'll be playing at Mississippi State next year.
Cool.
But there was a lot of athletes like that.
So you guys see a wide age range, but also a wide skill set.
Yes.
Everything from
every sport.
Kids who are going to go and ultimately be professional athletes, or kids just trying to be the best high school athletes they possibly can be.
And sometimes, and this is just as valuable to me, is we would work with a lot of athletes who were injured.
Yeah.
And they would be coming over from the sports medicine side saying, "Hey, I tore my ACL 6 months ago. I need to get back to playing shape." And you can get an athlete's going to heal regardless, but if you put them into a certain recovery or training correctly, you're going to make sure they not only heal, but you're going to come back stronger. They'll be less inclined to, have that same injury again. Which they're
not just recovered; they're more resilient.
Exactly, and that's, a lot of ACL tears. You end up coming back and tearing that ACL again. It gets worse and worse. So we're trying to combat that with a lot of athletes.
Awesome. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll jump into some takeaways to give to other athletes. What do they need to be doing? Cool.
All right, we're back, and so now what we're going to discuss is, some typical training mistakes that you see high school athletes making and what to do about it. And let's try to address at least 3 of them. So what's like the top 3 mistakes you see high school athletes making?
Yeah, I was excited about this question. I love talking about this one especially.
we could have a 4-hour podcast just on this question, but biggest thing I see, biggest mistake you see coaches and athletes making in training, and let's assume we're talking only about athletes, the general athlete, football, soccer, 90% of what you do in those sports has to be explosive. You can't have a slow, we'll call them slow twitch athlete perform well when it comes to dunking a basketball, running routes in football, sprinting in track. You have to be fast, you have to be explosive, you have to be twitchy. Biggest mistake that I see is, let me take one tiny step back. All this twitchiness, all this fast movements, explosiveness, it comes from the ATP PCR system. And for anyone watching who doesn't know what that is, the human body has all these energy systems. We'll call them different fuel tanks. 90% of what you do in sports is going to come from the very small fuel tank in your muscle that's going to help you do super quick movements. Let's say you're walking across the street and you turn and there's a car coming at you. You jump out of the way quick. That's all coming from PCR. You go to jump and dunk a basketball. It's all coming from the ATP system. So biggest thing I see is we're training outside of the system. You take a lot of athletes and let's say I tell you a tiger starts chasing you. For 10 seconds, you're going to run as fast as you possibly can. After about 10 seconds, that fuel tank is depleted, and you start using a different fuel tank. That fuel tank, there's fuel there, but you're not going to be moving as fast. You're not going to be as explosive. So what we see in a lot of sports with a lot of coaches is we're training outside of that the ATP system. We might, we're getting some training in, but say, hey, let's run suicides today. Let's run stairs up the stadium. There's a certain point where you're no longer training the ATP PCR system. You're training something else.
You're training in a time domain that's not applicable to your sport. Your sport exists in short bursts of high output, and you're doing long durations of medium output.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could even simplify and say you're not training the ability, you're training the capacity. Yeah. And you have to have a capacity, but what a lot of people don't realize is you can build that, aerobic capacity by training the ability. You can get faster, you can run a faster mile just by training 40-yard sprints. And a lot of people don't understand that. Every high school, football program almost is doing a lot of conditioning, and we're just now seeing at some universities, some professional teams, a lot of these coaches are saying, oh, we can not do conditioning. We can just do speed training. Yeah. And we're still getting the same adaptations.
Yeah. Or even just consider that, like, the sport is your conditioning for the sport.
Exactly.
Like the best way to get conditioned for football is just to play football.
Like another good example, you look at the mileage for a soccer player during a soccer game. They're running about 3 miles. Yeah. And coaches will look at that and say, oh, okay, 3-mile run today. Yeah. Boom. Never in that game are they just jogging in circles. It's very explosive movements. It's that explosive boom, 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 then maybe jog.
Is there value in, like, developing aerobic capacity so that you can do more of that explosive training?
So there's definitely value in the aerobic capacity, but almost never is it going to complement your explosive power. Yeah. It's inverse, though. Training to be explosive, trying to be fast, like I said, doing some 40-yard sprints, you're going to find that your aerobic capacity, your ability to run longer times has increased because you're – let's talk about it like this. If you have an F1 car and you say you have an F1 car versus some normal a Prius or something, the F1 car goes 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds. Prius maybe 10 seconds. Yeah. So that the Prius might have a higher – let's not talk about capacity with gas tanks and stuff, but you take an F1 car and you have that huge ability to increase from 0 to 100 so quickly, suddenly your capacity to drive at 100 miles an hour becomes a lot easier versus a Prius. Of course, I know cars aren't people, but it's very much the same. You have athletes who can sprint incredibly fast. Usain Bolt never ran a mile in training. Yeah. But I would guarantee he runs a lot faster miles than most people, even some cross-country runners do.
Yeah.
And he never had to train that.
Yeah. All right. So first one is, training the inappropriate capacity, the wrong time domain.
Yep.
What's number 2?
Number 2 would be, for me, one of my biggest ones is a lot of people, let's talk about sprinters, because it's kind of like the foundation of training with a lot of sports. You have a lot of coaches who say, hey, we need to get stronger. We need to get a stronger squat. We need to get our deadlift up. Sometimes you'll say we need to get bigger.
Yeah.
And it's you're not wrong, but what is way more important than having the muscle or training the muscle is training the nervous system.
Yeah.
And that people don't see that all the time because you can't see the nervous system. It's hidden. You can have the twitchiest guy in the world with no muscle, and you're not going to be able to tell until you see him move.
Yeah.
And that's an ability. A lot of people saying, oh, he's genetically fast, he's genetically twitchy. Yeah, a lot of people are gifted, but it's still very trainable.
Yeah. Well, everyone has a ceiling and a floor.
Yeah,
and
some people's ceiling are a little higher.
Yeah.
But it's very much trainable. I've seen it in a lot of athletes, and I never saw this until recently. Their athletes would come in the door, and they were running like a 5.5, 6 second 40-yard dash, which is relatively normal to slow. And within a year, these kids were some of the fastest in our facility, running like a 4.8, 4.7, 4.6s. And it is crazy what you can accomplish just by training.
Yeah.
And a lot of these athletes come in the door saying, I'm not a fast kid. I can't really jump that high. So I'm just trying to get stronger.
Yeah.
But it's crazy what you can train.
So what I'm hearing you say is that there's value to focusing on strength, but you have to recognize that there's a difference between like speed, power, and strength. Value to all, but if you're trying to build speed, fast twitch, high output very quickly, you do have to do specific training for that versus doing just strength work, which has value. It's just not the same high output. You're just under tension a lot longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strength training is extremely important. You can't get much faster. You can't get much stronger without strength training. And when we talk about speed, there's force and velocity.
Yeah.
Half of it is force.
Yeah.
So you have to be strong. A lot of very strong but very slow people, I guess you could say, can still run a really quick 10-yard dash.
Yeah.
Because they're putting so many newtons into the floor each step. Having a big squat, having a big deadlift, it is going to carry over. But when we train, we need to think about, hey, we're training the nervous system. What are we doing when we train the nervous system? We're trying to induce an adaptation that is going to make you better at, summating and recruiting as many motor units and as many muscle fibers as possible in a shorter time window.
Yeah.
You talk about squats. I like using squat just because it's a great example. You can recruit almost every motor unit in your body to do a squat. What we need with sprinting is that, but how fast can you recruit all that? Because sometimes you'll see, I guess deadlift might be a better one. You see some guys pick it up and then kind of hold it, and then they'll have to and then come back up. Sometimes it takes a second for those other motor units to hop in.
Yeah.
When we train sprinters, we want to teach that ability to happen in a shorter time period.
Yeah, and that maybe you're also saying sometimes there's a mistake in like training, thinking things in like body parts instead of systems.
Yeah, it's all body is all one piece.
Yeah, because you can develop high neural output with just a bajillion different ways.
Yeah.
So I can actually develop increased neural output by doing upper body exercises that will carry over to my lower body neural recruitment. Now, it's not, again, like specific adaptations do occur, but like you can get that carryover
Yeah.
versus like I can't necessarily train my biceps and get like quad growth.
Yeah. And here's why sprinting is like the go-to.
Yeah.
When we talk about training that ability, all the motor units, I can get a similar adaptation from someone by saying, okay, let's put 315 on the bar. We're gonna do box squats, 10 reps as fast as you can. You're gonna get an awesome adaptation out of that. But where we run into is you can't do that with a middle schooler or an undeveloped high schooler. What you can do is have them sprint.
Well, that one they don't know how to do the squats correctly,
and-
so they got the issues with the technique.
Yeah.
And they're just not quite. They're not as developed. Their nervous system's still in development, and so it's harder for them to recruit that doing the speed squats than it is for them doing sprints. That's an easier movement to teach to get that stimulus.
Yeah. And I always think about it like sprinting and running for humans is like flying for a bird. You pop out of the womb with the ability to sprint. It's already hardwired in you.
Yeah.
It just takes time to realize it and train it. But
Yeah.
once a kid knows how to run, you have the ability to get that stimulus without throwing 315 on their back.
Yeah.
And I would sometimes argue, depending on the athlete, that a full-on sprint, like 40-yard dash, as fast as you can, timed, is sometimes a better stimulus than that set of squats, especially if you don't know how to really get in there for those squats and say, I need to really hit 100%. Because some athletes just going up and down and moving the weight.
You put 315 on, they move 315. They put
Exactly.
315 a force
Exactly.
versus 350 a force or whatever, you know.
Sometimes just saying, get from here to here as fast as you can get a great adaptation out of that.
What all right, so we got, inappropriate time domains, not maybe inappropriate training stimulus with regards to like not understanding kind of the nervous system and the value of doing the sprints and the high neural output stuff. What's the biggest mistake you see?
So this one, there's a thing in training called the minimum effective dose and maximum effective dose. The minimum effective dose is what's the minimum amount of work required or stimulus required to induce the adaptation we're looking for. The maximum effective dose is the maximum amount of work or stimulus you can present to someone right before you go into kind of detraining or overtraining, pushing it too far to where the recovery is just impossible to come back from. So that's understand that minimum effective dose, maximum effective dose. There's a big window in between. When we train, we want to train to the minimum effective dose and slightly over.
Yeah.
Depending on where you are in your season, it's okay to go over the minimum effective dose.
Yeah.
You can do some extra reps, some extra volume because you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
Training is a poison, and the body's response to that poison is the adaptations.
Yeah, we might say stress.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
it's an autoimmune response.
Yeah.
Your body's responding to something that is destroying it by coming back strong.
it is. It's a stress that breaks you down and causes short-term negative effects
Exactly.
that then you have to adapt to and improve so that you can better handle that next time. Like I can't remember what it's called, but the low dose poison to make yourself basically immune to it.
Yeah, like you can talk about guys handling like snake venom.
Yeah.
You can make yourself immune to venom by taking micro doses of it every day. Until a certain point, you can get bit by a black mamba and be fine.
Yeah.
But you just take someone and say, I want the big bite, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
So similar thing in training, take the small doses. The big mistake I see is a lot of coaches are training well past that minimum effective dose far too often. Again, it's okay to go above that line. It's okay to push hard. You got to work hard to achieve things. But when you say, okay, today's going to be a tough day and you're going to be sore for 2 or 3 days later, think about what we're doing. Yeah, we got an awesome training session in, but in the 3 to 4 days to recovery, not only are you going to be sore, but your nervous system is not going to be producing and performing the same.
Yeah.
And you're missing out on the next 3 days of training. You're training below where you should be. So you're getting better at being this than getting better at being this. So
You know, one hard training session that causes 3 days, that needs 3 days of recovery, is not as good as 3 lower dose training sessions in which you felt great each successive session.
ding, ding.
Yeah.
That's it.
How do you, I mean, obviously you're managing that on like an individual level because different kids are going to have different recovery rates, but
Yeah. What I like to do is, general rule of thumb is you can spend about 30 minutes in the weight room. For an athlete, we're talking in season.
Yeah.
I have a meet on Friday. I have a game this weekend. You can still train an athlete 4 to 5 times a week, but the minimum effective dose is really, and depends on the athlete, how advanced they are. You can do like 2 or 3 sprints, sometimes a 10-yard sprints. You're going to go home. That's a warm up.
Yeah.
You're not going to feel fatigued or sore from that. You're still getting a stimulus from it, though. We're getting adaptations from that. We're getting the adaptations we want without the fatigue that you're used to. And you put that and you compound it every day. A year of that, you're going to have an incredible.
I think one of the things you and I talked about is like how quickly detraining and high velocity stuff occurs. I mean, it's like 72 hours. So
Yeah.
you can't afford to have one high output day that's just, 15 40-yard sprints or something.
Yep.
And you're toast the rest of the week because you'll actually detrain by the time you have your next training session. So it's better to keep that stimulus in on an ongoing regular basis.
Exactly.
So even if you had practice yesterday, we still need to do some type of high output sprint today within a volume.
Yeah.
It's not going to cause overtraining or make you feel bad. Another thing I think it's important to highlight with like high school kids is like most of their diets are terrible and their sleep's poor. So they're already like hindered from a recovery standpoint. So you definitely can't like overload. Yeah. You're better off being on the kind of more cautious side, understanding that they're already in a somewhat vulnerable spot when it comes to recovery.
Yeah. And one thing I want to touch on is a lot of people hear you talk about stuff like this and say, oh, so you're saying don't train hard, or you're saying don't train as often? Definitely not. I mean, if anything, you want to take the same amount of work you're going to do in a 3-hour workout, and I want to challenge the athlete to put that into a shorter time period. So we're at full intensity. When we sprint, we're not conditioning. We're not sitting over on our knees, panting, and then going for another sprint. We're going to sprint as hard as we can. Like you're being chased by a lion.
Yeah.
Then you rest for 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the distance we're sprinting. 2 to 3 minutes. You're not going to sprint again until you're at 100%, so that you can fully apply yourself. Because if you're applying yourself at a slightly fatigued state, you're not getting the same. Your muscles, your nervous system is not going to be under the same load and stress as it would be if you were applying that 100%.
Right, 100%.
And same thing goes to the weight room. You can, we're in the weight room, we're full intensity. When we're moving the bar, we're moving as fast as we can.
Yeah.
We're putting some weight on the bar. We got to move some heavy weights sometimes. It's just we're not going to do it, and we're not conditioning in the weight room.
Yeah.
We're not sitting there panting. We're full intensity.
Yeah, you're there's no wasted effort in either. We're not doing extra volume for wasted volume, and we're not doing any wasted sets. Like, we're warming up to our work weight. That's going to be done at 100% force output. Yep. We're going to get the necessary volume for today, and then you're done. We're not going to do. We're not doing extra stuff.
Yeah.
We're not wasting our recovery ability. We want you to be able to come in the next day and output at 100%.
Exactly.
And the other thing that does for you is it helps build you neurologically, and I would say psychologically, to output 100% every day, which is a requirement in sport. Mm-hmm. Every day you have to be able to output 100%. Yeah. Or at least close to it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, let's say we have 2 athletes, twins, genetically the same. They have 2 coaches, 2 separate coaches. One coach is like, hey, like what we're talking about, sprint super hard, lift super hard and heavy, keep the volume down, stay rested. and then the other coach is saying, hey, we're going to do the same thing but way more volume.
Yeah.
And we're going to, and guess what? We got conditioning afterwards. You have those athletes train 5 days a week that way for 3 months maybe. Who is going to be way stronger, way faster, way less likely to be injured?
Feel
at the end of
good.
the 3 months. Yeah.
More confident.
And that's what sucks is sometimes the guy who's technically doing less work and less volume, he's going to go further because of he's fully able to apply himself during that short volume that he has.
I heard a statement like anyone can make you sore. It takes a real coach to make you better. You know? Very cool.
Yep.
Awesome, Joe. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'm excited to have you here at MBS Fitness, and look forward to see some athletic improvements in our clients, bud.
Sweet. Thank you, David.
Awesome. Thank y'all. MBS Fitness Radio, out.
Thank you for listening to NBS Fitness Radio. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, follow us on social media, and check out our website at www.nbsfitness.net. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more NBS Fitness Radio.